What's going on, guys? We are here. Sorry I missed the video on Wednesday. We're popping one out on Friday. I wanted to talk about when players will get signed to teams and my estimate, right? Right now, obviously, pretty much everyone's a free agent or a restricted free agent at this point, or teams are building around others, right? We got Vatira being built around. We got Monkey Moon and Seiko. No, it was just Monkey Moon, I think, now at that point on that squad. Um, you got Joyo being built around. We got rumors that Atomic is being built around on G2. We know that Gen G is building around Jack and Chronic. So at least there's a duo there somewhere. Beast Mode Daniel are on the shopping market as well. Probably going as a duo somewhere. So there's a lot of question marks going on right now in the free agent market. When do players get signed? When do these free agents or restricted free agents, what will happen to them? And here's my guesstimate, right? We don't know when the year begins, when the season begins. Hopefully we get some announcements soon. Be nice to know when it begins. We know it's not going to start at the same time, right? Because by now I think it was qualifiers, right? And it was already announced and all of that stuff. So you kind of know that going in. So teams or orgs, it depends how much info they know. I bet some orgs probably know more info than others, I would think. But then they would probably talk to each other, right? So who knows? Maybe they know, maybe they don't. Either way, players very likely are not going to get signed anywhere before the season begins, right? At best, maybe a month before, if like a player is a hot commodity, right? Say it's like a player like Rise, who you know is like makes teams better, very, very good player. Maybe the players have to do it by themselves and put onus on, hey, org, I know you want me. I want to be signed. I want a salary even during this offseason. If you want me, you got to start paying me now, right? I feel like players have to go into the discussions around that, like, hey, I'm valuable. And if you don't take me in now, I'll go somewhere else, right? And there's probably very few players that have that bargaining power. I think Rise would be one of them, right? So we'll see how that works out. Like, I think the high end players, maybe they get signed to orgs earlier, but the rest probably are not going to get like actually signed until the season is about to begin. Because right now, everyone knows the esports bubble has basically popped, right? Orgs are not doing well. So for them to save money, why would they sign a player during a time when, at least as of right now, there's nothing going on, right? There's really no point. Unless they're a huge content creator, which some pros do, some don't. Then maybe you get some value out of that. But for the most part, it's probably not enough value where they want it from the tournaments, right? Now, to be fair, like I don't like based on the player salaries that we have now, I'm surprised they are that high anyway, because I don't see how they're that valuable. But I'm no businessman, so I don't really know. And I'm happy that the players are getting their bags, right? But for orgs right now, most of them are sitting there like, how do we pinch pennies a little bit? How do we make it through this time? I bet most are like, we're not signing anyone until we know when the season begins. And then we're going to sign them the month the season begins, right? Unless a player goes to them and pushes for that, like, no, you got to sign me now. I want to get paid or I'm going somewhere else. So I bet teams will likely come together. Like if there's some off-season events, you'll see some players playing together. And even if that is like weeklies in Europe or like the smaller end tournaments, you'll see them playing together, but they won't be officially signed, is my bet. And I bet most of those will work out, but there's always that case of like, say a Rise goes with Vatira and Oski for some reason on K Corp, right? And they're playing well, or they're playing like pretty decently, but then like right before the season's about to begin and he isn't signed yet, maybe they have a bad like monthly tournament or something in Europe where it's just not going well, or scrims aren't going well. Maybe they're like, oh, there's a reason why Vatira and me split. I don't know why I'm doing this, right? So at the last moment, Rise is like, all right, I'm out. I'm going to find some other team. When that happens, that's, of course, a domino effect. And we'll see what dominoes fall. Because of that, we kind of saw that last winter. Or, it was fall to winter. Where Rise almost went to V1, and then like dominoes began to fall. Com was leaving. Then for Optic, Magic Bear was leaving, and so on and so forth. That could still happen if players are not signed by orgs. Once a player is signed by an org, for the most part, there are going to be like, too bad, Rise. You're playing, we already signed you. We're not going to try and get a buyout for you at this point, right? It's just not worth it. So as long as the players are not signed, they can still move. So keep that in mind when you start seeing like maybe these rosters come together to play in some of these tournaments. But again, I don't expect orgs to sign very many players until they know when the season begins. And even when they do know that, they'll wait to that month, is my guesstimate. On the other side, you have restricted free agents. There's a bunch going down right now. There's the 2 players from K-Corp, Exotic Itachi. There's even Koi members. There's BDS players, or there's Seiko at least, who's a restricted free agent, I believe. And there's more throughout. But restricted free agents are kind of in this weird spot, right? Where, so to my guess, they are getting paid right now monthly anyway by their orgs until the orgs can find a buyout. Pretty much the orgs are just footing a bill that they probably don't want to foot. But the problem is they don't have a lot of leverage to have other orgs buy out those players. Because again, if there's no season right now, why would another org buy out a player and begin to pay him early? So those orgs are either going to cut their losses, and for right now, we haven't seen that. It depends on contracts too. A lot of contracts are different. I know some are like, you just got to give them 30 days notice, and then they get cut. Some might be like, hey, if you're not playing, maybe they don't get as much salary. I'm not really sure. But right now, we have a lot of free agents that are restricted. That basically just means they want another org to buy that player. Orgs right now are not going to buy players during this offseason. Until it's right before the season, then they'll think about it, right? Then they'll be like, okay, now what do we got? But at that point, the other org is footing the bill even more of their salaries of, I don't know, let's just say $5,000 a month or something like that. Maybe it's less. Like, it depends on the team, right? Maybe it's more, maybe it's less, whatever. But they're just footing this bill, and other orgs will be like, yeah, go ahead. You pay that player. We'll come for a buyout later. Maybe. So we'll see if any of those free agents that are restricted right now, I wonder if in 30 days, like if there's any clauses of like, we could just drop them. We'll have to see if that actually pans out. But right now, a lot of restricted free agents that could go unrestricted if the orgs don't want to foot that bill anymore. And then we have a lot of just free agents that also just kind of have nowhere to go until there's a season to begin, unless you're like a marquee player. If you're a marquee player, you might have that bargaining power to get paid during this offseason. But again, who knows when we start, right? So I think orgs will probably be penny pinching for the most part. There's some orgs that probably don't need to. But still, I think everyone can see the economics around orgs right now is not great. So that's what I expect. I expect teams to not be an official team for a while. We'll probably see them in smaller things where they'll be the same team for a while, but I still wouldn't say like, all right, it's official. It's those 3 until they're signed by the org, because they can always make that last moment move if they don't like something, which we've seen a ton. Like a team will form for like a fall split. 3 months later, like, oh, I hated playing with that guy. Or we hear that behind the scenes, basically. Like, oh, it just didn't work. I didn't like every day going to work having to play with them. So that can happen during an off season if it is a long time. So we'll see how it all pans out. But I would say for now, don't expect very many team announcements. You'll probably have rumors around players coming together. But those aren't 100% until probably the org signs them. then it's like 99%. Because I guess there could be still an awkward spot where they could like get a buyout late, but it's very, very unlikely. So until an org signs a player, I would still put it like relatively high, but there is a good shot that those rosters can still change during this offseason, however long it is. So keep that in mind as you go over rumors and go over roster talks. But for the most part, right now, everyone's going with the flow. Just waiting for information. I think that is the main driving point is everyone's just waiting to hear an announcement of some sort. So we'll see when that comes. But until then, I'll catch you next time.